The waiting room smelled of lemon-scented sanitizer and the metallic tang of anxiety. It was a specific chemical profile that coated the back of my throat, tasting like aluminum foil and bureaucracy. I sat on a chair that was designed for someone with a different spinal column. Probably someone who didn't spend 10 hours a day framing custom homes and hauling pressure-treated lumber. My knees knocked against the cheap veneer of the coffee table, a piece of furniture that wobbled because whoever assembled it hadn't tightened the cam locks properly. Every time I breathed, the particle board creaked, a sound of cheap manufacturing that set my teeth on edge. I stared at the white noise machine in the corner. It was a small plastic dome emitting a sound that was supposed to be ocean waves, but to my ears, it sounded like a compressor leaking air. A slow, rhythmic hiss that grated against my nervous system. Hiss. Pause. Hiss. I checked my watch. 3:50 p.m. I was 10 minutes early. Being late was a violation of the court order. Being early was just torture. The judge didn't care why I swung the hammer. He cared that I swung it. The contractor I'd been working for insisted on using untreated pine in a moisture-rich environment behind a master bath shower wall. I told him it would rot in 6 months. He told me to shut up and hammer. So, I put a sledgehammer through the wall to expose the negligence before the tile went up. It was a load-bearing disagreement. The court called it malicious destruction of property. I called it preventing a future collapse. Because the wall did have black mold behind it, the judge had been lenient. No jail time, just restitution, and 6 weeks of conflict resolution evaluation to ensure I wasn't a danger to society. So here I was, waiting for Emily Wilson, the court-appointed evaluator. She was 24, holding a provisional license, and she looked at me like I was a live grenade with a loose pin. She didn't hold my freedom in her hands. She was just a note-taker who filed attendance logs, but she controlled the timeline. If she flagged me for non-compliance, the agency would reassign me to a new evaluator, resetting the 6-week clock. I didn't fear her power. I feared the administrative hell of starting over. The door to the inner office remained shut. Outside the window, the city was trapped in a gray, sleeting mid-November afternoon. The sleet tapped against the glass, a frantic, scratching sound that matched the itch in my hands. I needed to be working. I needed to be holding a tool, measuring something, fixing something. Sitting here was making the volatile label feel like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then, I felt it before I heard it. A vibration in the floorboards. It traveled up through the soles of my Red Wing boots, a low-frequency thrum that rattled the loose joinery of the waiting room chair. Thump, thump, thump. A bass line. It was slow, mournful, and messy. It wasn't the sterile precision of the white noise machine. It was jazz. Real, live, acoustic jazz, coming from the floor below. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm center me. It felt like wood grain, organic, flowing, imperfect but solid. The door to the hallway, not the evaluator's office, but the main corridor swung open. It wasn't Emily. A woman backed into the room. She was struggling with the heavy fire door because her hands were occupied with a tarnished silver serving tray loaded with porcelain cups and a carafe. She kicked the door shut with a velvet-clad hip, a move that was both graceful and practiced. When she turned around, the beige room seemed to shrink. She was vivid. That was the only word for her. She was wearing a vintage dress, the color of crushed emeralds, covered by a heavy canvas apron stained with what looked like coffee grounds and dark walnut stain. Her hair was the color of dark honey, piled loosely on her head in a chaotic bun held together by what appeared to be a chopstick and a paintbrush. She smelled like cinnamon, burnt sugar, and rain. She stopped when she saw me. She didn't look at the clipboard on the desk. She didn't look at my file, which sat there with the red court-mandated sticker. She looked at my hands, which were resting on my knees, scarred from chisels and stained with the dark tint of oil-based finish. "You have sawdust in your eyebrows," she said. Her voice was like the bass line downstairs, textured, husky, dropping into the lower register. It wasn't the high, clinical pitch of the evaluator. I reached up and brushed my forehead self-consciously. A fine dusting of maple fell onto my jeans. I came straight from the job site. "I'm Margot," she announced, walking past me to set the tray on the reception desk. "I'm not the evaluator. God forbid. I'm the mother, and the landlord, and the caterer. Apparently." She turned to face me, wiping her hands on her apron. She was older than Emily, maybe 40 or 42, but her energy was younger, restless, vibrating with a frequency that made the fluorescent lights seem dim. Emily is running 20 minutes late, Margot said, checking a vintage watch on her wrist that had stopped moving. Crisis call with the district supervisor regarding paperwork formatting. It's very high stakes. Oh, I said. My voice sounded rusty. She looked at me. She really looked at me, tilting her head to the side. Her eyes were hazel, flecked with gold, and they held a terrifying amount of amusement. You look like a man who hates waiting in beige rooms, she observed. You look like you're about to disassemble that chair just to see why it squeaks. It's the cam locks, I admitted, surprised she noticed. They aren't tightened. It's unsafe. This room is suffocating, isn't it? She gestured to the white noise machine. That thing drives me insane. It sounds like a dying radiator. Leaking compressor. I corrected automatically. She smiled. It wasn't a polite customer service smile. It was a real expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Come downstairs. I blinked. Excuse me? Downstairs, she repeated, pointing to the floor. My club. The velvet note. The coffee up here is freeze-dried sadness. Downstairs, I have an Italian espresso machine that costs more than my car and requires a degree in physics to operate. And I have scones that I burned only slightly. I'm supposed to stay here, I said, eyeing the closed office door. The evaluator is strict. If I leave, she marks me absent. That triggers a review. The court ordered you to attend the session, she countered, leaning against the desk. It didn't order you to suffer in the lobby for 20 minutes while my daughter argues about font sizes. Come on. I need someone tall to reach the top shelf of the liquor cabinet anyway. The stepladder is broken. I hesitated. Emily couldn't arrest me, but she could make my life miserable with paperwork. Yet, the smell of cinnamon was overpowering the smell of sanitizer, and the baseline was calling to me. I stood up. I can reach high shelves, I said. I unfolded to my full height. 6'3" of stiffness. Margot looked up, her eyebrows raising. Yes, you can. The ground floor was a different universe. We descended a narrow, creaky staircase that smelled of old wood and dust, a good smell. The door at the bottom opened into a cavern of shadows, velvet curtains, and polished brass. The velvet note. Read the gold script on the window, peeling slightly at the edges. It was beautiful. In the way a ruined cathedral is beautiful. But, to my eyes, the eyes of a man who understood how buildings stood up, it was a disaster, waiting to happen. I stopped 3 steps into the room. My eyes scanned the space, ticking off violations like a checklist. The floorboards near the entrance were cupping from water damage, moisture intrusion from the threshold. The molding around the stage was separated by a half-inch gap, indicating the subfloor was settling. The air was heavy, damp. And the bar? I walked over to the bar. It was a massive slab of mahogany, probably 100 years old, curved and heavy. But it was split down the center. A jagged canyon ran through the wood, filled with cheap, white wood filler and epoxy that had yellowed with age. It was ugly. It was disrespectful to the tree. It breaks your heart, doesn't it? Margot was behind the counter, firing up the espresso machine. It hissed violently, sending a plume of steam into the dim light. Who fixed this? I asked, my voice tight. I ran my thumb over the rough epoxy. They used the wrong bonder. The expansion coefficients didn't match the mahogany. The wood moved with the seasons, the filler didn't. It cracked again. My ex-husband, she said dryly, tamping down coffee grounds with a sharp thud. He wasn't very good at bonding. In carpentry or marriage. He thought glue solved everything. He poured that stuff in there 10 years ago. I looked at the crack. You can't glue a movement crack. You have to bridge it. You have to let it breathe. Here. She slid a small white cup across the scarred surface. I took the coffee. It was dark, rich, and had a crema that was perfectly hazelnut colored. I drank it in one sip. It hit my system like a jump starter. I'm Kaisen, I said, setting the cup down. I know, she said. I see the appointment book. You're the property damage case. Emily talks about you. Vaguely, of course. HIPAA and all that, but she says you have simmering hostility toward structural incompetence. I winced. I put a sledgehammer through a drywall partition. Did it deserve it? The wall didn't, I said. But the lumber inside was pine, where it should have been oak. The header would have sagged within 5 years. The door frame would have jammed. The house would have failed. I couldn't walk away and let them build a lie. So, you saved the house, she said, leaning her elbows on the bar, her chin in her hands. And they sent you to evaluation. I yelled while I did it, I said. Apparently volume is the crime. And the fact that I wasn't the foreman. She laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that seemed to chase the chill out of the drafty room. Well, Kaisen, welcome to the Velvet Note. We have excellent coffee, terrible cash flow, and a fire inspection on Friday that we are absolutely going to fail. I looked around. The egress path is blocked by those tables. The stage railing is loose. I can see the wobble from here. And this bar top. I tapped the wood. This is a splinter hazard. If an inspector runs his hand here, he shuts you down. Health code and safety violation. Section 12, paragraph 4. I know, she sighed, the light dimming in her eyes. She picked up a rag and started polishing a spot on the brass rail that was already clean. I have a quote from a contractor to fix the bar. $4,000. I have exactly $400 in the operating account. The band needs to be paid tonight. I looked at the mahogany. It was good wood. Honest wood. It had been abused, filled with garbage, and left to rot. It bothered me. It bothered me more than the court order. It bothered me physically, an itch in my fingers that I couldn't scratch. I hated broken things, especially things that were broken because of laziness. Do you have a sander? I asked. Margot paused. In the back. In the storage closet. Somewhere under the Christmas decorations. And mineral spirits? Maybe? Next to the paint thinner? I rolled up the sleeves of my flannel shirt. Go find them. Because I have 20 minutes before your daughter tries to make me meditate on my feelings, I said, checking the grain direction of the wood. And I can't look at this bar for another second without fixing it? It's offensive. By the time Emily Wilson came downstairs, looking frantic, I had stripped the yellow epoxy out of the crack using a chisel I kept in my truck, which I had retrieved while Margot found the extension cord. I was currently hand sanding the grain with a piece of 120 grit paper I'd found in the utility drawer. The air smelled of sawdust and old solvent. The white noise of the espresso machine was gone, replaced by the rhythmic scritch-scratch of the sandpaper. Mr. Collins, Emily gasped from the bottom of the stairs. She was wearing a blazer that looked too big for her shoulders and clutching a file folder like a shield. Her glasses were sliding down her nose. What are you doing? This is boundaries. This is a conflict of interest. You cannot be working in my mother's bar. I didn't stop sanding. The rhythm was soothing, back and forth, with the grain, never across. I'm waiting for my evaluation, Doc, I said calmly, just killing time. Mother. Emily turned to Margot, who was casually drying a wine glass. You cannot fraternize with the subjects of my evaluations. The agency will pull my provisional license if they think I'm employing clients. This isn't a joke. I have to log every interaction. She looked genuinely terrified. Her hands were shaking around the file folder. This wasn't just about rules. It was about her own survival in a system that was watching her as closely as it was watching me. She wasn't a tyrant. She was a rookie afraid of her supervisor. I gave him coffee, Em, Margot said, her voice unbothered but gentle. And he's fixing the bar. Look, he got the ugly yellow stuff out. It actually looks like wood again. It's unethical, Emily squeaked. Her face was flushing pink. Mr. Collins, please, put down the sandpaper. We need to go upstairs. I need to document that this happened so I don't get flagged. I stopped sanding. I blew the dust away. The raw wood was pale, exposed, but clean. The wound was open, but it wasn't infected anymore. I didn't dismantle it, I said, running a finger over the smoothness. I prepped it. It needs oil. If you leave it dry, the moisture from the drinks will raise the grain and you'll be back to square one. Now, Emily commanded, trying to steady her voice, but the clipboard shook in her hands. I sighed. I put down the sandpaper. I wiped my hands on my jeans. Thank you for the coffee, I said to Margot. She winked at me, a slow, conspiratorial wink. I walked past the evaluator and up the stairs. For the next hour, Emily Wilson talked about identifying triggers and impulse control. She asked me to rate my anger on a scale of 1 to 10. I sat there, nodding at the right times. But my mind wasn't in the beige room. My mind was downstairs, mixing tung oil and sawdust to create a slurry that would fill that crack perfectly, creating a bond that would hold for another 100 years. I wasn't supposed to go back. The rules of my court supervision were specific. Attend evaluation sessions, maintain employment, do not engage in criminal activity. Fixing a bar wasn't criminal, but interacting with the evaluator's family was a gray area. Emily held the pen that wrote the attendance log. If she wrote boundary violation, the agency would reassign me. I'd have to start over with a new evaluator, recount the whole story, waste another 6 weeks. It was an administrative nightmare I wanted to avoid. But the next Tuesday, I brought my tool bag. I arrived an hour early. I parked my truck in the loading zone out back. I knocked on the metal service door. Margot opened it. She was wearing a different dress, emerald green velvet, and she looked frazzled. Her hair was falling out of its clip. She looked like she'd been crying, though she'd tried to fix it with powder. "The ice machine is leaking," she said by way of greeting, and the inspector moved the visit up to Thursday. "Move," I said gently, stepping past her. I walked through the kitchen, which smelled of garlic and panic. I went straight to the bar. I pulled a bottle of tung oil and a bag of fine sawdust from my kit. "What are you doing?" she asked, following me. "I'm making a slurry," I explained, pouring the oil onto a pallet and mixing in the dust. It matches the color of the wood perfectly. It fills the crack, hardens like iron, and moves with the humidity. No epoxy, just wood, healing wood. She watched me work. She didn't hover. She didn't ask if I was angry. She didn't ask about my childhood. She just handed me a rag when I needed it and refilled my coffee. "You have good hands," she said quietly. I froze for a second. My hands were my livelihood, but most people just saw them as hammers, tools to be used, or weapons to be feared. "They're just hands," I mumbled, keeping my eyes on the work. "No," she said. She reached out and touched my wrist, just above the glove line. Her fingers were cool against my warm skin. "They're patient. You treat the wood like it has feelings." "Wood does have feelings," I said, focusing intently on the slurry to hide the sudden jump in my pulse. "It remembers. If you force it, it splits. If you guide it, it bends." "Is that why you broke the wall?" she asked softly. "Because they were forcing it?" I stopped working. I looked at her. Her eyes were dark and deep, seeing too much. "Yeah," I said. "Something like that. You can't build a life on a lie. It eventually falls down." We worked in silence for an hour. I finished the bar. It was seamless, smooth as glass, warm as skin. I packed up my tools. "It's beautiful," she whispered, running her hand along the edge. "It needs to cure for 24 hours, I said. "Don't let anyone touch it." "Kaisen," she said. I looked up. She was standing close. Too close for a court-mandated waiting room, but exactly right for a jazz club. "I can't pay you," she said. "Not what this is worth." I didn't ask for payment. "I know. That's why it's dangerous." She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You're a fixer, aren't you? You see something broken, and you have to put your hands on it. Only things that deserve to be saved," I said. The air between us grew heavy, charged with something that wasn't sawdust. It was electricity. It was the hum of the bass line, even though the band wasn't playing. "Mother!" The voice cut through the air like a circular saw. Emily was standing at the top of the stairs, vibrating with indignation. "Mr. Collins, this is a violation of the protocol. If you continue to interact with my family outside of the designated evaluation time, I will have to note boundary issues in your final report. Do you understand what that means? It means the agency reassigns you and investigates me for dual relationships." I straightened up. I wiped my hands on a rag. The piece of the work evaporated instantly. "I'm fixing a safety hazard," I said calmly. "So you don't get sued when a patron gets a splinter?" "It is a conflict," Emily insisted, stomping down 2 steps. "Upstairs. Now." I looked at Margot. She looked torn, her gaze darting between her daughter and me. She looked apologetic, but also defiant. "Go," she mouthed. "I'll handle her." I packed my oil. I nodded to Margot. "Don't put wet glasses on it until tomorrow." I walked past Emily. I went upstairs. I sat in the small chair. I listened to the white noise, but my hands still smelled like tung oil and Margot's perfume. Thursday came. The inspection. I was at my actual job site. framing a luxury condo downtown. It was soulless work. Metal studs, drywall, everything straight and sterile. I was essentially a robot with a nail gun. My phone buzzed in my tool belt at noon. It was a text from an unknown number. He failed us. The stage railing. I stared at the phone. I should ignore it. I should go back to framing this condo. I should stay out of trouble. Getting involved with the mother of the woman who was writing my evaluation logs was objectively stupid. It was complicating the paperwork. I looked at the metal studs. I looked at the time. I'm taking lunch, I told my foreman. Long lunch. I drove my truck to the brownstone. I parked in the loading zone, hazard lights flashing. I grabbed my heavy drill driver, a box of 6-inch lag bolts, and a tube of construction adhesive. I walked in through the back. The club was dark. Margot was sitting on the edge of the stage, her head in her hands. The inspector, a man named Henderson, not my probation officer, but a city official who looked like he ate regulations for breakfast, was writing on a clipboard near the door. It's a liability, Miss Wilson, Henderson was saying, his voice echoing in the empty room. Code requires it to withstand a 200-pound lateral load. I can hire someone next week, Margot pleaded, looking up. Her mascara was smudged. Please, we have the opening night on Saturday. The tickets are sold. The band is booked. Code is code, Henderson shrugged. I'm posting the notice. Red tag. No occupancy. I walked past him. I didn't say a word. I stepped onto the stage. The wood creaked under my boots. I kicked the railing. It rattled. Loose anchor points in the floor joists. The wood had rotted around the old screws. You can't be in here, Henderson barked. This is a closed site. I turned to look at him. I put my tool bag down with a heavy thud. I'm the contractor, I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was contracted to fix things, just not paid. Let me see your license, Henderson demanded, stepping forward. I didn't flinch. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet. I slid my state-issued Master Carpenter certification card out and handed it to him. It was valid. It was real. It was the one thing the court hadn't taken away. Kaisen Collins, Henderson read. He looked at me, then at the card. You're registered for residential framing. Structural repair falls under the scope, I said. I was stuck in traffic. Traffic is hell today. I took the card back. I dropped to my knees. I examined the base of the railing. The subfloor is soft, I announced. Screws won't hold. That's why it failed. I looked at Margot. She was watching me with wide eyes, hope flaring in them like a match. Do you have any scrap hardwood in the back? I asked. Oak? Maple? Something dense? There's the old piano bench. It broke last year. It's solid oak. Get it. She ran. Her heels clicked on the floorboards. I looked at Henderson. Give me 20 minutes. You can't fix structural rot in 20 minutes, he scoffed, tapping his pen. I need to see a permit for alteration. Temporary bracing, I countered. Immediate hazard mitigation. You can red tag me Monday if I don't file today. I'm stopping a fall. Henderson hesitated, his pen hovering over the clipboard like he was waiting for the wood to groan and prove me wrong. He knew the code allowed for emergency stabilization, but he wanted to be difficult. Fine, Henderson grunted. 20 minutes. If it wobbles an inch, I'm shutting it down. Margot returned with the legs of a solid oak bench. I cut blocking wedges. Zip, zip, zip. The sound was clean and precise. I went under the stage. It was dark, dusty, and smelled of old beer and mouse droppings. I crawled on my back until I found the joists. I used the construction adhesive and the oak blocks to sister the joists, reinforcing the old wood with the new oak blocks, creating a fresh, solid anchor point directly under the railing posts. I came back up. I drilled pilot holes through the railing base, through the floor, and deep into the new oak blocks below. I drove the 6-inch lag bolts down. The impact driver screamed, "Whir chunk, whir chunk." The sound was aggressive. It was the sound of permanence. I stood up. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I grabbed the railing with both hands. I leaned my full weight 210 pounds of Carpenter against it. I hauled on it. It didn't budge. It was as solid as the bedrock of the city. I looked at Henderson. Lateral load test passed. Henderson scowled. He walked over. He kicked the post. He shoved it with his shoulder. He grunted. Fine, he muttered, looking disappointed. He scribbled on his paper. But You need to file the permit for the alteration by Monday. We will, Margot said, her voice breathless. Henderson slapped a green sticker on the window and walked out. The door clicked shut. Margot stood there for a second, trembling. Then she launched herself at me. She didn't ask. She hugged me. It wasn't a polite side hug. It was a collision. Her arms went around my neck, and she buried her face in my flannel shirt. She smelled like relief and lavender. I froze for a heartbeat. This was contact. This was strictly forbidden. Then, my arms went around her waist. It was instinct. It was structure. Supporting structure. She was shaking, and I was steady. You saved us, she whispered against my chest. I just put in some bolts, I said, my voice rough. She pulled back, but she didn't let go. She stopped close enough that I had to hold my breath to stay steady. The air in the club changed again. The dust motes seemed to stop dancing. Kaisen, she said. I looked at her. I kept my hands at my sides, fighting the urge to touch her again. Mother! The scream came from the top of the stairs. Emily. Again. We sprang apart. Emily came storming down the stairs, waving a clipboard. She looked close to a panic attack. I saw his truck. This is it. I am terminating the evaluation, Mr. Collins. I am reporting this to the agency immediately. You are manipulating a vulnerable family member to avoid doing the emotional work. He just saved your inheritance, Emily, Margot shouted back, stepping in front of me. He fixed the rail. Henderson signed off. We're open. It doesn't matter, Emily yelled, tears of frustration in her eyes. He is unstable. He has anger issues. He destroys property. He is dangerous. I'm not dangerous, I said quietly. I fix things that are broken, including the things you ignore. You're in my mother's club. You're confusing her. Emily pointed at the door, her fingers shaking. Get out. Don't come back. I'll mail the referral request to the agency. I can't have this on my license. I looked at Margot. She looked torn, her gaze darting between her daughter and me. She opened her mouth to speak. Go, I said to Margot. She's your daughter. Don't fight her for me. Kaisen, wait. It's okay, I said. The rail is solid. It'll hold. I picked up my tools. I walked out the back door. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, just breathing. The storm hit that Saturday night. It wasn't just snow, it was a nor'easter. Wind howling at 50 miles an hour, temperature dropping to single digits. A blizzard that shut down the city. I sat in my small apartment, staring at the wall. I sat so still the room felt louder than a job site, and I couldn't make my hands move. I realized I didn't miss the evaluation. I didn't even miss the fact that I was technically now in administrative limbo until the agency reassigned me. I missed the sawdust. I missed the smell of espresso. I missed the way Margot looked at my hands like they were magic wands. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. The heater in the main hall just died. It's 20 degrees outside. People are in coats. The band can't play with cold fingers. Emily is crying. I don't know what to do. I miss you. I stood up. I put on my heavy Carhartt coat. I grabbed my HVAC tool bag. I drove to the club. The streets were empty, slick with ice. My truck slid sideways twice, but I corrected it. I had to get there. The front door of the Velvet Note was open, letting in swirls of snow. Inside, the place was freezing. A crowd of people in cocktail attire were huddled around candles, looking miserable. The band was trying to warm up their instruments, but the trumpet player was shaking. Margot was behind the bar, looking defeated. Emily was sitting on a stool, wrapped in a blanket, looking useless. I walked in. The heavy boots on the wood floor made a sound that cut through the murmurs. Kaisen? Margot whispered. Where's the furnace room? I asked. Basement? She said. But, Emily. I looked at Emily. She glared at me, shivering. Her lips were blue. She didn't look like an authority figure anymore. She just looked cold. You can report me on Monday, I told her, my voice hard. But right now, your mother's dream is freezing to death. So get out of my way. I went to the basement. Problem. The pilot light was out. The thermocouple was likely corroded, or the sensor was dirty. Method. Bypass, clean, reignite. I worked fast. My flashlight beam cut through the dark. I located the furnace unit. It was an old beast, cast iron. I cleaned the sensor with steel wool. I checked the gas line pressure. I struck the striker. Click. Click. Whoosh. Blue flame. Beautiful, hot, roaring blue flame. I waited until I heard the blower kick on. I waited until I felt the warm air pushing through the ducts. I went upstairs. The vents were blowing heat. You could feel the room thawing. The crowd cheered. The band struck up a tune, Summertime. Ironic and sweet. Margot was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. She held 2 glasses of whiskey. She handed me one. "To the fixer," she said. "To the owner," I replied. We clinked glasses. "I spoke to Emily," Margot said. I choked on my drink. "And?" I told her that she is my daughter, but this is my business. And I told her that if she can't see the difference between unstable and passionate, she needs to go back to school. Margot took a breath. "She called her supervisor an hour ago. She formally requested to be recused from your case due to a conflict of interest, specifically that she cannot be objective about her landlord's contractor." "What did the supervisor say?" I asked, feeling a strange tension in my chest. "He approved it immediately," Margot said, pulling her phone out of her apron pocket. She showed me the email confirmation. "You've been reassigned to a Mr. Peterson? He starts Monday. Emily has no jurisdiction over you anymore. The file is closed on her end." I felt a weight lift off my chest. "So, I'm not in violation?" "Not anymore," she said. "You're just a patron. Or something else." She took a step closer. The club was full of people, but we were alone in the noise. "You fixed the bar," she said, tracing the line of the mahogany I had healed. "You fixed the rail. You fixed the heat." "It's what I do," I said. "I restore things." "What about you?" she asked. "Who restores you?" I looked at her. I saw the kindness in her eyes, the strength in her jaw, the way she had defended me against her own flesh and blood because she believed in my hands. "I think I finally breathe right in here," I said. "Like the air fits." She smiled. She reached up and brushed a speck of dust from my shoulder. "You're not a patient here, Kaisen." "No," she said, leaning in until her lips were an inch from mine. "You're a partner." Her fingers tightened in the fabric of my collar, pulling me down until the distance vanished. The noise of the room, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the wind outside dropped away. My breath caught in my throat, holding steady, like I was lowering a heavy beam into place and didn't want to jar the foundation. When she finally pulled back, the tension that had lived in my shoulders for 5 years was gone, replaced by a terrifying, wonderful solidity. When we broke apart, the band was playing a ballad. Emily was watching from the corner, holding a hot toddy. She looked at the vent, feeling the warm air. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped an inch. She looked tired, not angry. "Are you working late again?" Margot whispered, her hand resting on my chest, right over my heart. I covered her hand with mine. "I'm done working," I said. "I'm just waiting for the next set." We stood there, the warmth of the furnace wrapping around us, the strongest thing in the building finally being us. On Monday, Peterson's office emailed the reassignment order. My attendance record stayed clean. Henderson's signature line was blank, no violation filed. The end?